Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, the only one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed. So you can all have a bit of a smile because I don't admit it often. This is actually take two. I messed up the audio the first one. I broke my mic. So, okay, take two.
Where were we?
Well, let's just give a shout out to everyone on the show that was so understanding for us taking a united stand against the people who've spoken out about serious allegations of Ubisoft. We decided to take 1 week off to let voices be heard, but now we're back to normal, full steam ahead, and we have a lot of projects planned. And now on about United, I should have really tied this in easier in the first edit. We're talking about Unity today, a game that I admit is a masterpiece for 2014. 2020, it's not a masterpiece, but for 2014, I admit it's a masterpiece. And if you want to get the torches, I'll go hide. I've got a basement somewhere. Right.
You might have a few. Masterpiece is a huge word.
It is a huge word. And
we'll get into why you think it was a masterpiece, because I am, and I'm pretty sure our listeners will be as well, keen to understand why.
Well, as I said the last edit, I'm going to defend to my last breath that Unity, behind the bugs, because I'm going to have to stretch that. I did not play a bugged version. I will stretch that. So my viewpoint is a bit one-sided. Even though I never updated the patch, I may have had a copy that had already been stabilized. But at the time, we were giving an open world that was complete open world, fresh new combat, stealth was more involved, RPG mechanics were lighter and fleshed out, story was hit and miss in places. Maybe Arno had a dodgy English accent for a French assassin, but it was amazing for the technological side, and well, the evolution from 1 to Unity is just mind-blowing. You couldn't say 1 looks like Unity, and you would never expect Unity is the evolution of every game since 1.
Well, I mean, I'd be very worried if Unity looked like Assassin's Creed 1.
So would I, actually.
Considering the time that's passed, and I would really start to question how good this developer is if this, 7th game in the series looks exactly like the first game in the series. That would be probably a massive red flag for me. So yeah, I don't know if that makes it a masterpiece, but certainly, yes, I'm happy that it didn't look like Assassin's Creed 1.
Well, I think anybody is, not to be rude. Assassin's Creed 1's good for the time, but not good for 2014 on a PS4.
You don't like that constant grey colour scale?
No, I want my Assassin. Blame Black Flag. They give us a vibrant open world, and that's what I want for Assassin's Creed. Give me that any day.
I think it's not hard to settle on what the best thing about Unity is. This revolutionary Paris is, in terms of a large built-up city, probably the most beautiful setting that we've seen in the Assassin's Creed games. Bearing in mind, on the whole, I still think Black Flag looks better. But I'm talking about for an actual built-up city, it's like nothing we've seen in Assassin's Creed yet. It is stunning to look at, to see, this large Paris, revolutionary palace, seeing Notre Dame in all its glory. It was nothing short of a joy to look at, really. You could just walk the streets for hours. Every building looks different. It just had so much character, which, is not easy to do in an artificial city.
And I think it just proves how Ubisoft was dedicated to the franchise. as if you can see online, they did have an area that was 100,000 NPCs that weren't copy and pasted clones like a lot of games do. These were fully fledged AI with their own unique traits, personalities, did their own thing. And for a 2014 engine on a new console, this is actually amazing to see.
Yeah, ridiculously impressive, insanely impressive. You know, it is incredible to you're climbing up some building and you look down and there's just so many people in the streets. It takes a second to actually contemplate that it's a game and this is actually they've created this somehow and it kind of works. That's certainly how it, and when you get to ground level and you're really kind of in the hustle and bustle of all these so many different people, these massive crowds of people, it's incredible to experience for the first few times. But then you just want to get through the crowd, and the more people there are, the harder that is. It's stopping me from getting to point A to point B, which is what I want to do.
Well, if you want to get to point A, point B, there's a newly designed free roam mechanic. And if you want to be a master assassin, you need tons of crowds to hide in plain sight.
No, I agree. But let's not pretend that Assassin's Creed games have been about stealth.
I swear, Kill a Mermaid in Black Flag was pure stealth. Come on.
To Kill a Mermaid. It was. Not saying you can't have stealthy moments. But unfortunately they created a monster where stealth wasn't a viable option, so why would you bother? Besides for the laughs, obviously.
I do think Unity did try its hand at stealth. The AI was a bit more noticeable around stealth. Thank God they fixed my issue, but the Hidden Blade was now a stealth-only weapon. Thank you for listening to me. I just think it all welcomed a lot of verticality with stealth, especially with the rooftops, the crowds, the crouching behind corners, the oh my god, my brain's gone blank. The ghost thing, where they spot you and it leaves like a ghost. Please tell me you know what I'm on about.
I remember. I don't know what I can't.
I was only playing it 2 days ago. It's like a detection meter. An imprint of where you last was standing appears on the board, and the AI always walks to that last location, so you could use it to draw somebody out, run around a corner, stealthily
it's like
stab them.
last known position or last scene or whatever. It's one of those two, something like that.
It's along them lines. And that was kind of good for stealth, but you are right, it's more enjoyable in France to go toe-to-toe with swords.
Yeah, and they changed up the combat a bit, not enough for my liking. They obviously kind of did away with the whole counter kills and chaining the kills thing that we'd been used to. But combat still wasn't difficult. It's kind of it flatters to deceive. Obviously you've got the instant kills are gone, so you automatically assume, okay, so maybe it's going to be a bit more tricky. I might have to learn a few things, but no, you just parry the attack and then you just respond with a lot of attacks and kill them.
It's still the button mashing stuff we
used to. Mashing. And do you know what the problem is? It felt less fun. That I just think, well, I'd rather just chain kills together. You know what I mean? I'd rather just press a button and kill 10 people in 10 seconds.
I can see that. And on reflection, if I look back at it now, I think it's a good step, because if you look at how the combat is now, Unity is something that the combat in Origins actually started, because you did have the tiny bit of a dodge mechanic, wasn't that good? You had the parry mechanic, which, as you said, wasn't really that good for creating an opening, and the rest of it was just down to good luck and button mashing, which then evolved into better dodge, better parry, and more skill with timed
I think
attacks.
you're giving Unity too much credit for that. I think it started in Revelations with the Jaegers.
Okay, I can see that now.
I think that was the first sign for me that they knew how to create a tougher enemy that required more intellectual fighting. Unity obviously expanded on that, and look, although I didn't think it worked in this game, it was a sign. Yeah, they're going in the right direction with this. They're changing it up. They're refreshing it. They need to do that.
And I do agree. I think the reason why I speak so highly of Unity and why I will call it a masterpiece is I'm no way forgiving how bugged it was, how the story was lackluster in places, and the accent. What the heck were they doing with the accent? I think I strongly say it's a masterpiece because when you put it next to Assassin's Creed 1 to Black Flag, you can see this game evolved in all the right places. And I think that's what makes it a masterpiece to me. Not that it's the best game in the series, because it isn't, but it does everything we wanted Assassin's Creed to be, but maybe they could have done more to make it better.
I think that's generally the case with most of the games. With the exception of a couple. Yeah, I think generally you struggle to find a perfect Assassin's Creed game for everyone, certainly.
Yeah. I do have a question from from Harlem, Angel of Harlem, who's in our Discord server. You can find a link on our Twitter, and he asked if Unity was given more time to be polished and prepared, would it have had a better reception and received well with fans?
Probably not.
Do you
I
not
don't think the bugs were the be all and end all of this game.
Oh,
no, I don't.
I'm intrigued to learn more.
I don't. But bugs are never good. But I don't think that's necessarily what made this game bad for me. I just didn't think the game was fun.
I can see that.
I play games to have fun, and the second a game stops being fun or just feels like it's something I have to do rather than want to do, you've got a serious problem.
I can see the logic there.
I think you combine what was a memorable story, not really, didn't really get the juices flowing, an incredibly kind of dull character, and a map that you can barely look at because there's so much on it. That becomes less fun the more and more you play it. Obviously, as a fan of Assassin's Creed, you give it its due, you give it its time, you play it through. And it always felt like I was waiting for that moment where I'd be like, wow, this is fun. And unfortunately for me, that moment just never came.
I think one of the other things that does limit the fun, and I know about it from research, but I was way past the time, is the initiations program, which is like a website or something you linked to Unity to unlock certain chests. This wasn't a good idea from what I've read, and a really dull companion app for the game, which I've played via an APK because the game's no longer available, but it's dull and boring, and all it does is help you find those little Nostradamus puzzles in the game, but doesn't really help much. And I can understand where the game isn't fun because there is a lot pinned against it than there is pinned to it. The initiations, all the chests, even I'm struggling to get the chests now. The Nostradamus puzzles make no sense. I don't get them. But I don't know, maybe I'm a bit naive because I just love it for the change, mainly. That's why I speak so highly of it.
And I think it's just introducing stuff like I'm sure I remember it kind of vaguely, but I read up about it again when I was kind of just coming up with my notes for tonight. There were 4 different in-game currencies. 4.
Was there? Oh, I can't even remember that because I know
There were
which ones were they for?
obviously the French, I think livres, I think they were called, but they had Helix credits.
Yeah.
What else? I've got it written down here. Bear with me 2 seconds. Sorry about this.
That's fine.
God, my scribbled handwriting.
Yeah,
they had livres, Helix credits, Creed points, and Sync credits. I think something like that. And obviously, you could buy the Helix credits with real money. The problem is I don't remember what any of those things did.
I do.
I remember thinking, why are there so many different currencies that I need to try and keep track of?
I think with the currencies, it took me a week to research this. I'm not going to lie, and I don't like researching, but if I remember correctly, the French currency, the Levi, was in-game currency for everything. The Helix credits was for the microtransactions, which is just cosmetics, which no one really uses, to be honest. And the Creed points were for the multiplayer, but they weren't currency as in buy items, they're more currency for. I don't really understand what they were currency for. You got them for doing. It's not explained well. I will give them that due. It's not explained well, but if you do air assassinations, lifts, parkour movements, you get Creed points and the help for the multiplayer. Do I understand it? No. And sync points, I believe, was actually for the companion app. I believe, but none of this was explained in game. That's the dilemma.
Yeah, exactly. I just remember being incredibly confused at the time.
I'm still confused now, and it's 2020.
I don't even understand it now,
not to be
researching
it. And I really think this is where Unity comes into a falter, because I'm not going to stop saying it was a masterpiece for when I played it because of how it evolved. But I do support the fact that this game should have been better with a lot of its mechanics. It should have explained the point system, how everything worked. Multiplayer, I still don't get now. That should have been explained 10 times better. I think there's a whole list that they could have gone better, to be honest.
Yeah. I think for me, it's a massive disappointment, because I think, the Paris that they built is probably one of the most beautifully kind of realized environments, in the series of games, which has had its fair share of really beautiful environments. For one to stick out like this one did was special. It was just a shame for me that the rest of the game didn't do it justice.
And I will agree with you on that one.
And
to
I
be
feel
honest,
like if you're gonna try and change the fundamental kind of core concept of a game in terms of how it plays, you've got to nail that. You've got to smash that out of the park. And unfortunately, they didn't. It just left me feeling like, yes, if they went just back to the basics that we're used to, would, probably results in a less substantial game in terms of the development of the series. But it might have delivered a more satisfying game.
I'm going to agree a little bit with you, because if they did fix a lot of stuff, I am with you. It could have been better, which is what you really want with games. But I do think for what it actually managed to do right with the free running, change of parkour in the world, I do think it was great for what it was. And I think we could talk about something we've not actually talked about. and that's the multiplayer.
Yeah.
Because unlike, this is where I'm going to get mobs after me. Unlike Revelations, Brotherhood, and Black Flag's multiplayer, this one was actually built into the core game,
Yeah.
which kind of makes the game impossible in 2020 to complete all the trophies if you're a trophy hunter. I kid you not, guys. Been trying to platinum it. It's impossible without friends.
Yeah,
And
basically.
it doesn't work. The multiplayer does not work.
Do you know what the problem is with this game? This is a 2-year game that they made in 1 year.
I've never saw it that way.
It's like Origins is what Unity should have been.
I can
And
see
if you'd
that.
have given them another year, I think Unity would have been a lot closer to what Origins is. I think, but they were caught up on this whole, it's an annual release, we're going to get as much money out of this as we can, and it suffered as a result.
I think the other thing it suffered from, and I talked about it last week, and I hope they don't make the same mistake this time. And if they do, as a fan, I will not be impressed. They locked it to PS4 only. Now, I know it's not a big deal, but a lot of people, when the new console comes out, they do transition just to next gen. They get rid of old gen and jump to next gen. And with old gen, they had Rogue, which featured at the end a good 10-minute setup of the events into Unity, which if you were like someone like me who would get rid of a PS3 and then jump straight into a PS4, you're losing out 10 minutes of a setup for the overall arc because they've decided not to make it a cross-gen game, not give it enough time for it to be a build-up of new people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that it makes sense. I think the issue you're talking about is not. That's more of an industry issue. Unfortunately, exclusivity will always exist. It will never stop as long as money is the currency of the world. Exclusivity will always exist. Unfortunately, I think one thing we can count ourselves fortunate on is the age of technology. So if it is a 10-minute scene that's going to help me understand the next game a bit better, but I don't have the console to play it, I don't have too much of a problem with saving myself 50 quid and just watching a 10-minute video on YouTube.
Oh, I know that, but I just think call me out is I did play Rogue on PS3 and then I waited a couple of years and got Unity, and to this day it still shocks me that when you play these Assassin's Creed games, you always know what the story is, but when you play Black Flag and then play Unity, the jump in the story is a bit, why is it jumping so much? If that makes sense, it's just I know Black Flag was a bit of a jump as well from 3, but the Unity jump doesn't seem like there's a bridge between Black Flag and Unity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it.
But that's a small niggle.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one because it's an issue that kind of it depends what type of player you are, doesn't it? You get some people.
Yeah.
Like I know some people that essentially treat every Assassin's Creed game like its own thing. They're aware that there's this kind of more expanded universe of storytelling and things going on, but they don't care about that. They just play the games for what they are. Okay, now I'm just an assassin in France. Or now I'm just an assassin kind of running around the Caribbean.
Or were they sailing?
Yeah, so those people, they don't care. And that's fair enough. That's why they play the games. If that's how they enjoy them, I'm not going to tell them otherwise. That's how they enjoy them.
Yeah.
It's an issue for the other half of people who are kind of more engrossed in the story, the kind of background of things and how it all links together. Yeah, it's more of an issue. But I think as with the kind of availability of content at the click of a button, I think it's less of an issue nowadays. When these games came out, more of an issue, certainly.
Yeah.
But now it's so easy to just record a clip from your console and put it on YouTube nowadays that I think it's the easiest it's ever been to catch up on story that you might have missed.
Yeah. And I just think from how I played Unity and how it flows, the start of Unity is a very odd one. Your father dies, you go looking for the person that killed your stepfather, and it's as if Arnold suddenly forgets why his father died. It's suddenly who killed his father. And it's just, for me, Assassin's Creed has always had a tight, not tight as in watertight, but a tightish plot line. If you know cause to effect, you know why Edward's on his trail, you know why Ezio's on his trail, you know why they're rising up. But with Arno, it's like, right, my dad's died. Why did it happen? I'm now with some stranger. Some stranger dies. I'm now on a magic trip to find the strangers who is now my stepdad's killer, but I've totally forgotten about my real dad who's actually an assassin. It's like the story was just all over the spot.
Yeah.
And
so much that I didn't really pay any attention to it much when I first played it. I was like, it was more like I can't really be bothered to work out what's going on right now. I just kind of want to play the game and see what happens.
And maybe it's a lesson for the future for Ubisoft, because they have got better a bit. But I don't want to get any more pitchforks.
Look, I think this game was a turning point in the series, in good and bad ways. I think Ubisoft learned a lot from this game that set them on the path that they're on now. So, whether you like Unity or you don't like Unity, you have to acknowledge that what they did wrong or right in this game helped them become a better developer in terms of the Assassin's Creed games, anyway.
So before we do the scoring, it's that time of night where we go over our best bits, our fondest memories.
I think,
who wants to kick it off?
I'll go. I think just like scaling the Notre Dame. You get to really appreciate the kind of architectural detail that's gone into it when you climb a building like that. Obviously, such an iconic building in its own right. To see the kind of love and care that's gone into the design and the development of that building was really special. And obviously, to climb it, with the new kind of updated parkour kind of system and climbing system, which wasn't perfect. It was probably the best it's been. The way I felt about the parkour was it's a bit like autocorrect. It's obviously it's a smoother system because it's anticipating what your movement's going to be, and when autocorrect works, it's really good. But there's a reason every now and then we have to say, "Oh, damn autocorrect." It doesn't account for, it can never factor in every possible decision that you might make with a human brain. So it wasn't flawless, but the best yet. Certainly for climbing something like the Notre Dame.
I can agree with that, and I think mine is similar to yours because mine does involve the parkour system, and that was after about 6 hours of practicing going up and down, of finally finding a flow, of being able to smoothly climb up a building, transition to climb down, assassinate some dude, run back up, and just continue that flow that it reminded you of the old CGI trailers of Assassin's Creed. Wasn't as good. It was a bit clunky because CGI and gameplay is different. But when you got the flow, you did feel like an assassin. The way you could do a backward spin off a corner of a shop onto some guy, the way you could just run up and then free run down into a hay bale. It just felt more assassiny and smooth for me. I don't know.
No, it's fair
I just
enough.
like running
No,
buildings,
don't we all?
jump into hay bales. I was disappointed I couldn't do any weird tricks like Black Flag. I had the Killer Mermaid. Unity, I'm just some dude in a crowd.
Yeah, basically.
I miss this. So, score time. Black Flag is our highest scorer so far.
It is, and I doubt it's going to change this week. It's a 3 from me.
Low blow.
Well, it's probably higher than some would have expected, given what I've said.
I agree with you, though.
I think hugely ambitious, not very well executed. It's felt rushed, just to kind of keep up for that yearly release schedule. Just didn't too much. It just felt incomplete. Felt like half a game. And although I didn't experience many issues with bugs on release, a lot of people did. And if you release a game in that state, that is not a good thing. It's unforgivable on a game-to-game basis, not long-term, but it's not great. So 3 would be the top end of what I'd be prepared to give it.
For me, just because I'm a weirdo, I'd have to give it a 4. I deduct a huge point for I never experienced myself, but if I put myself in another fan's shoes, I will deduct a huge point of how messy it was at launch, how the story doesn't flow properly, and how the voice acting is such a bummer compared to how dedicated they have been in previous series. But I will score it highly because it's the first game in the series to break the mold. It broke tradition of what an Assassin's Creed used to be, of a linear story that was tied behind story arcs with a combat that was just a repetitive arcade button mashy in a sense, but it was fun. And I think that's just why I give it 4 points, because what it got right, it set the tone for the future. But I think that's all we have time for tonight. Do you want to say anything?
No, I think, it's glad to be back. Yeah, again, like you said at the beginning, just want to thank everyone, obviously, for their support in our decision not to put an episode out last week. We felt it was important to leave the space open for kind of more important voices. But we're also glad to be back and, focusing on the games. Yeah, that's about it.
So next week we're going to be talking about Syndicate, which a game I believe suffers because of Unity. But we can talk a lot about that next week. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you all next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.